Okay, thank you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, everyone is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Okay. Clerk, are you ready to start? I think you said yes, you're muted. Okay. Okay, so the council will come to order. All rise and salute your closest flag.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance
To
To
the
the
flag
flag of the United
United
States
States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
Which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of us veteran servicemen and women and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. You may be seated. The clerk will call the roll. Hold on, we gotta unmute you. It's not giving me that option, clerk. I can't unmute you. You have to do it yourself.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Anderson,
Anderson here.
Kamel,
Mel here.
Condon,
Condon here.
Crow,
Crow here.
Di Maria,
See Maria here.
Linehan,
Linehan here.
Murphy,
Murphy here.
O'Malley, Spatafora,
Spatafora here.
Winslow,
Winslow here.
Sika,
Sika here.
all accounted for.
Under the provisions of the open meeting law, for those of you in attendance, please be aware that MATV and John Mayara is recording this evening's meeting. Again, John Mayara and MATV is recording this evening's meeting, so just be aware there is audio and video recording of tonight's meeting. Before we conduct our first order of business, I wanted to start this meeting off with a brief statement, given everything going on in our country right now. Like so many, I was shocked, saddened, angry, and traumatized by the murder of George Floyd that we all saw unfold in Minneapolis. It was a needless loss of life, one that I am sure his family will never be able to understand, and one that is a call to action for all of us. Our justice system will have its say in making sure that those involved are appropriately punished. There is quite simply no room for racism or this senseless loss of life in our great country. There are righteous protesters calling us to action to end systemic racism in the midst of others who are derogating from that message with rioting and acts of violence. This takes away from the message of our peaceful protesters. I call all Maldonians to have your voices heard in a productive and respectful way, which is more effective than violence and chaos. Lastly, I want to go on record in saying that what happened in Minneapolis should not have happened, but it also does not reflect the good work being done day in and day out by our local police department. We know they are better than that because they have proven it to us over the years. Let's stay strong together, Malden. Before we go on, I'm going to take this time because I feel that it is a very important issue at this time for us not to wait to the end of the meeting. But if anybody else had any statements that they, may or comments that they would like to say on this topic, to just please raise your hand and we'll go through them first. Councilor Anderson, I saw you.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Yes, this is a terrible awakening that America is seeing with the senseless murder of this man in Minneapolis. I will tell you that as a Black American, that what has been happening throughout our country with the too many killings of Black men in particular by the police throughout the country is not something that's new that's new to most Black people. I think what we are seeing is that there's an awful lot more cameras that people have, and a lot of these things are being recorded, and as a result, the world is seeing what's going on. So this isn't a new phenomenon that's happening. This is something that's been going on for a long time. The world is just now seeing it. So, you know, you've heard me say it so many times how proud I am of our city and the cohesiveness that we have with the community and the police and this just being such a welcoming community. And I would hope that sort of violence never has to take place in this city. There were, back in the days, years ago, there were questions about the Malden Police Department and their treatment toward Black people. But I think all of that has gone by the wayside in the city of Malden. And hats off to the leadership, our chief of police, who has set the tone, a very positive tone for the city of Malden. And I'm glad to see, and I'm proud to see my colleagues here in the city all standing up, denouncing this kind of senseless and baseless bigotry, racism that has turned into death. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Crowe, I saw you next.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't think that it's really hard to put into words really the horror of the 8 minutes and 46 seconds, you know, as we watch, you know, a man being murdered. But the so I think, you know, Councilor Anderson sort of said it best, and hopefully locally in Malden, we can, you know, help move forward. I know that there is a vigil on Thursday, a virtual one. I don't think there's any plans to do anything in person at the moment. So, but I think we really do have to kind of move beyond vigils. We should not have to have them in the first place. That, you know, so today, actually, the Black and Latino Legislative Caucus had sent out a press release, really, but with some really action steps. And there's a 10-point plan to address police violence and advance racial justice. And really on the federal level, supporting Congresswoman Ayanna Presley's resolution to condemn police brutality, racial profiling, and excess force, oversight, improve oversight, independent. So there's multiple steps. There's some legislation in the state as well. So I think I could send this to Ron, and maybe he could put it out sort of either on the City of Malden Facebook or the website, you know, really to help take some action. You call our legislators and have them sign on to some of these bills and some of the other legislation that hopefully will make a change in the whole country. So I think, you know, it's just a horrible experience that, you know, unbelievable, words can't even describe. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have their hand up? Councilor Winslow. Sorry, you're muted. It's not letting me unmute you. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I just also want to express my outrage at the murder of George Floyd. Just very disturbing. I think it disturbs average citizens, and it's also good to see police across the country, including our chief, speaking out against what happened. I mean, now it is the time to call for justice, and there are peaceful protesters that are calling for that, and to go beyond just what happened, but to make sure that is happening every day. I mean, I think the great thing as we sit here in Malden, we have been doing this work to create communications and create avenues to be addressing these things. Malden Core is one prime thing. I mean, just within the past few weeks, we addressed and supported people in our Asian community who were feeling racial aggression. So we should be proud in Malden that we have been proactive, but we always have to be vigilant. So I think that's important. And I'm wearing my No Place for Hate button. So let's continue to have Malden be that way and be a beacon for the rest of the country who's dealing with this. So just in thoughts and prayers to the family of George Harvey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. I'm not quite sure if I'm the host of this meeting at the moment. Oh, I am now. I just saw everyone's hands go up. Okay. Great. Okay, so Councilor Kamel, you had your hand up.
I will defer. Well, you know all the order there. So I do want to also, obviously, I want to echo what my colleagues are saying, but I also want to say that I know we should stay focused on the city of Malden primarily, but I do want to denounce efforts of pulling the rolling the military out, shooting rubber bullets and tear gas at peaceful protesters. These weren't people who were looting at all. I think we've all seen that. I know there's nothing we can really do at this local level, but it needs to be said that it's disgusting. It is the move of a dictator. And I want to vehemently, voice my disgust and my outrage at that as well. On top of this, it is putting innocent bystanders, peaceful protesters at risk, their lives at risk. It's making the job harder for our law enforcement who are actually out there, our peace officers who are out there in every city across America doing what they know how to do and what they're trained to do. And I hope we can all also condemn that, because it is absolutely out of line and there's no place for it in the United States of America.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy. Oh, hold on. Let me unmute you. It's not letting me. Can you do it?
I have it.
There you go.
Thank you, Madam President. Words just don't express the sadness in my heart of all of this. I couldn't watch that video without crying, literally crying. And I think that's the reaction that anyone who's seen it has had. It was just such a horrific, unfeeling situation that occurred. It goes beyond what's acceptable in our community, and we all should denounce it. That should not happen to anyone, anywhere, in any situation. So, I just want to follow with everything that everyone else has said, that there's no place for hate. There's no place for hate in our city. I've seen signs all weekend where I was, love is greater than hate. And I think that we all need to recognize that we're all fellow human beings. We all need to be treated with dignity and respected. And I hope that, as leaders of Malden, we show people that that's who we are, and we will not tolerate anything like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Di Maria.
Thank you, Madam President. I share all the sentiments of my fellow colleagues. I am absolutely appalled by what's been going on in our community and, my country. It has to end. I mean, we can't just continue to talk about it. It has to end. I grew up in the 70s, and I feel like this is a rerun. We really, really need to work as leaders in our community to make sure that this does not happen in our Malden. The Malden community is organizing Malden Core on racial equality, Facebook, I guess, or Zoom meeting, and they welcome all of us to call in. And we this is being organized by many different groups, many different supporters. And as leaders, talk is cheap. We really need to make sure we get it right this time. This is shameful, sinful. And I went to bed with my mouth open and got up and watched the same thing over again. And I'm just appalled by it, as we all are. But I just really encourage us as leaders to wrap our arms around it and put it to bed. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Spatafora. It's not, oh, there you go.
Yeah, sorry, I had to shut my window. The planes were flying over my house. I apologize. Thank you, Madam President, and I will not try to speak as eloquently as my fellow councilors. But I think we've been a little bit too easy on what actually occurred on live TV with that officer. It was a murder. We witnessed a murder on TV. It was 8.5 minutes. And if you told me that that was not real, I wouldn't have believed you. It's amazing that it can happen in 2020, given growing up in Malden and seeing. I'm sure I know there is, but the good thing is growing up here, we seem to get along a lot better, and our police department certainly would never act that way. But we can't go around with blinders saying that there are not individuals in every profession, in every color, that have that hatred, and certainly it played out live on TV. And Council Anderson said it best. I heard a quote the other day where it said, "This is nothing new. The only thing new is it's being recorded on phones now." So while you see something like that, you not only think about where we are, but certainly where we're headed. And then you see the next step is the protest. And they have the right to assembly. It's great. And then you see some victimization of that, kind of covering up for that act, that murder. Again, I think it's got to be called the murder because that's what it is. And it's disgusting, regardless of a cop or not. I mean, it was a murder on live TV. And it's something I think this country will not and cannot stand for. So I hope the government in the state of Minnesota and the federal government does the best they can do to have swift justice, not only to that officer. I think other people forget there were 3 other officers standing by watching that individual suffer and did nothing. So in my opinion, they are accomplices, and I think the loss is the same thing. And the good thing is I think everything I've seen on TV, nobody is defending those officers, and nobody should be. The one thing I would say that I found in the back of an op-ed piece this week, which is sad, there was a gentleman named David Patrick Underwood, and you probably don't know that name because certainly there are other names in the news that have to be addressed. But David Patrick Underwood was a federal guard, African American, worked for the Homeland Security, who was guarding a courthouse Friday night and was murdered in his day. And he was murdered in the middle of the day. And he was protecting the courthouse against any type of the marches, but his name gets lost. So I think as somebody, when I read that, I certainly understand why his name was lost, but there are other victims of this brutality that has to be addressed as well. And so I would just ask that we keep everybody who was affected by this tragedy in our thoughts and make sure that we certainly do not do this, not only in the city of Malden, but the best of our ability as leaders of the city of Malden. And that's all I have. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I think to Councilor Kamel, to kind of elaborate on what he was talking about, we are in the midst of a constitutional crisis. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and this is all happening in the backdrop of what has been known as hundreds of years of institutional racism. And, I think that the goal now is to really elevate and amplify Black and Brown voices. I'm going to quote our colleague on the Minneapolis City Council, Vice President Andrea Jenkins, who has declared, who is asking that we all declare a state of emergency on what she defines as this public health crisis, which is racism, and the fact that we must be resolved to name and confront racism that permeates American society. Vice President Jenkins states that, quote, "Until we name this virus, this disease that has infected America for 400 years, we'll never, ever be able to resolve this issue." I recently, since being in kind of confinement because of COVID, read MLK's last book before he was assassinated, which is called "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" And I would highly recommend this be read by every member of our community. It is a very touching book, and it really kind of shows a roadmap of how we get out of this. And I lastly would like to thank Chief Molis. You were one of the first public officials to call this murder, and I really appreciate that because that is exactly what this is. And I respect you a lot for being able to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I actually just want to thank you as our council president for taking the time to center our meeting and to help set a tone, recognizing the significance of what's happened and to leave space for us to speak and reflect on it. I think as a white woman, I know that I cannot possibly understand or fathom what this feels like for my Black neighbors. But I do want to take this opportunity to share my outrage, to say explicitly that Black Lives Matter, and to elevate the voices of our local leaders of color. I would encourage any community member who's also moved to action to engage with Malden Corps and to create a dialogue with our law enforcement and our city government. Like Councilor O'Malley, I was also very pleased to see some of the statements made this weekend by our city and our police chief. These were bold statements made condemning the violence, and I was really proud to see that very necessary public communication take place and to also make the choice to amplify it publicly myself. I think as elected leaders, that's really the very least that we can do, and that there will be likely many opportunities for us to make a real difference. I know I'll be at Thursday's vigil with Malden Corps and the Mystic Valley area branch of the NAACP, and I would urge anybody watching to please join us.
Thank you. Councilor Condon.
Thank you, Council President. I'll try not to be redundant, but I, like everyone else, was sickened and saddened by what I saw. This man handcuffed with the full force of the officer's weight on his neck. And it was out and out murder. And I was so upset watching it. I've had numerous occasions in dialogue with that chief. And he, for one, is a firm believer that the crime rate in the city of Malden is as low as it is due to our diversity we have in our community. And I believe him. He's a firm believer in the diversity in this community. And I hope we can follow through with the proper training that these people, the small percentage, very small percentage of people that do not act the way they should in their capacity. And I hope that we can just move forward on this. I was so proud of the peaceful demonstrators that were trying to stop the people that were just out there to do damage, because my heart went out to these small business owners that have been closed down for 3 months, and then to have their businesses destroyed and vandalized. And the peaceful demonstrators were trying to protect their business. So we have so many good people in this world. We just have to move forward. We have to get better. And I think we will. We have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Condon. Thank you all for changing the docket a little bit this evening, but like Councilor Linehan said, I did feel that it was a very important topic and I didn't want to wait to the end of the meeting to address it. So on that, we will do our first order of business.
Chief Molis will attend meeting to speak on any incidents during COVID-19.
Okay. Try to unmute you, Chief. It might not let me. This computer, you're going to have, unmute yourself.
You know how to do that?
Good evening, Chief.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I am encouraged every time I come before the city council, because whenever I do that, I know I'm appearing in front of a group of people who made a choice to represent the community in a very important role. And when I come before you, in many respects, coming before the people that the people have elected to represent them. So having said that, having heard all of your insight, emotion, and perspective on what we all can call a murder, with implications all over the world, I was listening and I said, all right, so when I get the chance to speak, where do I start? And I guess I started when I took an oath to be a cop. Or maybe before that, when I was a little kid and I dreamed of being a cop. Because every dream that I had as a little kid, every hope that I had when I took the oath in March of 1980 was about having an impact on people's lives, not their deaths, and having an ability to be the person needed in situations when people needed help. That's the essence of the job as I hoped it to be. And be honest, I never envisioned that I would be a sergeant or a lieutenant or a police chief. But so where do I start? So I just start by saying it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And being here, joined by Sergeant Mike Powell, is a reflection on my career because I knew Mike when he was a high school student. And I know of no finer person who has served his country and his community. And I know originally the invitation was given to me when George Floyd was still alive. I was supposed to come before you to talk about policing during COVID-19. So this is a reflection on one of the realities of police work. You never know what lies ahead. You never know what you're going to encounter. You never know how the world can change suddenly, locally, nationally, and globally. So I'm before you now with much more to talk about. And so I'll ask you now to kind of engage the conversation. I am honored to be here. It's important to be here. One of the greatest aspects of my job is the ability to engage with the public. I often quote something that's from the founder of modern policing, George Peele, who said, "The police are the public and the public are the police." In that he means that I am one of them and they are one of me. So I welcome your questions. I thank you for the honor of being here. And I hope I'm able to engage in a conversation with you in a way that reaches out to anyone who wants to know and understand a little bit more about who we are as a Malden Police Department and what our hopes and aspirations are, and also the good work that we have accomplished and what we will continue to try to do.
Thank you, Chief. First hand up is Councilor Barbara Murphy. Thank you.
Got it.
Yep.
Took a moment. Thank you, Council President Sakia. Chief Molis, thank you so much for coming in this evening. It couldn't be more timely and more needed, I think, to have you here in front of the council and also to have the public hear you speak. One of the things that I would like you to just address tonight, although we do see some of your offices here and there, we don't often have the opportunity to speak with you about how the police department is structured, and especially how you've structured it to make sure that our citizens' needs are met and that they feel comfortable coming into the police station to discuss any issues that they might have that are happening around them that might be a result of any type of racial bias or just uncomfortable feeling of what's going on in their lives. So I see you have a guest with you that would like you to introduce and maybe tell us a little bit about the job he's doing.
Sure. To be on the first part of your question, on a general sense, it's one of the great privileges that we all have is to police the most diverse city in Massachusetts, with 70 languages spoken at the high school, where a police officer that goes to roll call at 8 o'clock, his first call could be dealing with someone from Haiti. The next call could be with someone from Morocco. After that, it could be someone with an emotional or physical challenge in life. So the everyday reality of a city like Malden provides every member of this department with the privilege of understanding more about humanity than perhaps any police department in Massachusetts and beyond. So how do you prepare for something like that? And what is our approach? Well, Sergeant Powell and I are actually speaking to you from our police station. And part of our architecture actually speaks to that point. When we were contemplating building a new police station, one of the things that I asked was that we would have a community room that was open with glass so it was transparent, so that people that drove by did not feel that they were driving by a fortress, a place that they needed to find a secret way in, or that there was an attempt by us to create a divide between us and the community. So within that symbolism, there is some actual reality to what we do. How is the city policed? Like most police departments, we are a patrol-orientated agency. By that I mean, every day at roll call, there are a number of officers who come in, go to roll call, go out and police this community in different sectors. But the beauty of that is that I go to these roll calls. And when I stand at these roll calls, I have had the honor and the privilege over the past 7 years as chief of seeing some of the best hiring I've ever seen in my 40 years as a cop. So I can tell you that when I'm at that roll call, I see people who are African Americans from El Salvador, Brazil, an African American who is fluent in sign language, people who, through the hiring process, reflect in many ways the community that they are going out to police and to risk their life for. But within a diverse community, I guess the question would be, how do we be sure that the public knows how to reach us when they need us? I'm here to tell you that in addition to going to roll call, we look at all of the reports, we see the interactions that are occurring with the public, and remarkably, we see that people from all walks of life, all aspects of the community are reporting things to us, asking us for help, asking us for assistance in ways that allows us to provide them with the services they need in a variety of ways. We do have access to the multitude of languages that are spoken in the city. If that becomes a problem, we do have varieties of support services, even in the field of domestic violence, to provide services to people from all backgrounds and walks of life. We have a detective agency that is able to investigate crimes in a multitude of situations, especially if we find that members of a certain ethnic group, race, religion are the victims of being targeted. And just touching upon, Sergeant Powell here, he is a detective sergeant, but he also plays in the important role of investigating bias crimes, hate crimes, or any crime in which we feel that race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or a disability might be a motivating factor in the perpetrator. Now, I just don't offer those words in an empty way. Sergeant Powell and I talked about this earlier. We have a track record. And on those rare occasions over the years, and when I say rare, I want to emphasize that, when we have seen an incident in which there is even a remote possibility that bias or hate was the motivating factor or one of the factors, we place the highest priority on validating whether or not the incident happened, and then gathering information to lead to the prosecution. There is no offense that draws more attention from me, Sergeant Powell, the detectives, or the entire magnitude of this department than crimes that are related to intolerance, hatred, bigotry, or bias. And I cannot emphasize that enough. And my emphasis is added with power because I know the times that it has happened. And anyone that knows me, anyone that knows Sergeant Powell, anyone that knows the way this police department operates on a real basis or a philosophical one knows that those particular types of incidents are treated with the highest priority, because one of the fundamental noble aspects of policing is when you stand up for somebody who nobody else will stand up for. When somebody feels intimidated, alone, and afraid, and doesn't think anyone will stand up for them. That is when your police department becomes a police force, and it becomes a force of good. And there's nothing that makes you feel better when you have a badge, when you took an oath, when you can take someone who is afraid, when you can take someone who is intimidated, when you can take someone who might feel that no one cares about them, and prove to them that somebody actually did care. And that is some of the most rewarding moments of my life and my career when that has happened. And one of the greatest sources of pride for me, when one of my cops is the one who stands up for somebody who nobody else would. Especially when they are somebody who has chosen Malden and chosen this country, because the country that they used to live in is a place where the police are feared, they are avoided, and their police station is a place that you wouldn't even think of going there. When they are able to walk into my building or walk up to one of my cops and ask if they can take a picture with them so they can send it home, because the ability to talk to a cop and take a picture with them and let your children interact with them is something that is completely unknown where they came from. That's why this is such a rewarding place to be a police officer and such a privileged place to be a police chief. And if I'm going on a little bit too long here, it's because it's at moments like this, when I go to roll call, it makes me look at those cops, and when they say here, it means that they're here for everybody. And something I said the other day, the preamble to the Constitution, striving for a more perfect union, we do it with imperfect people, me being the most imperfect. But we do it in a way with great nobility and great courage, but ultimately fairness and compassion. So I know I went on a little bit there. It's probably going to happen a lot tonight because I believe what I'm saying. And when Mike Powell was the person that I wanted to step into that role of the biased hate crime investigator, I looked at a couple of things. Is he a good investigator? Well, if I did something wrong, I wouldn't want Mike Powell after me. And I don't say that because it's win at all costs. He does it right, he does it professional, and he does it thoroughly. And secondarily, he's one of the classiest people I know. And obviously, he's the type of person that I want the community to know when they look at and say, this reflects the type of agency that we are. So, Mike, if you
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the kind words. You can't ask me to speak after this man right here because he's such a great speaker. But I echo the Chief's sentiments. And like he stated, when those incidents come in, we take it the highest priority here in Malden, and that's why, as a, me working in this department, very blessed to work in the type of environment we do here in Malden and this police department. So thank you again, Chief, for your kind words.
And just to kind of bring to light one other thing. With regard to hate crimes, with regard to bias, there are specific statutes that protect people in those situations. And if my voice can resonate out to the community, if anybody feels that they have been the victim of a crime and one of the motivating factors is race, religion, ethnic background, sexual orientation, or some form of disability, those are the things we want to know about. Those are the things we want to investigate. And I am telling you, there is a high priority placed on those incidents, and every resource that we have is attached to them. Now, I also want to tell you that we do not turn a blind eye. We look at reports regularly. Sergeant Powell and I speak on a regular basis, sometimes multiple times during the day, over the weekend. We look at the reports as they come in. Officers know when they take a report, if bias is an issue, it is a very important factor in the report. Sergeant Powell communicates to the entire department if they are aware of any incidents of hate, bias, bigotry, to notify him. So we have many things in place. We have many things in place. And the biggest thing that we need in place is if people feel vulnerable, alone, afraid, to let us know. Or if you know somebody who feels alone and vulnerable and afraid and unwilling to report it, I'm begging you, give us the chance to prove to you that the badge that we wear, that the oath that we took is more than just a symbolic raising of the hand and the pinning of a piece of metal. It lives and breathes in our actions and whether we back up what we say. And we do back up what we say. And because of that, each and every day, I become more aware that this is the right police department for this community, in this place, in this time. And that doesn't mean that we rest on our laurels. I told you before that I was coming before you on your invitation to talk about COVID. George Floyd was still alive. We didn't even know who he was. Well, now he's in the forefront of the emotion that we're talking with. So because of that, we have to evolve as a police department. So training, police academies now, mandatory training on de-escalation. I have sent officers to crisis intervention training, a very comprehensive course that helps people deal with people with mental health issues. So less lethal. We've brought in equipment that allows officers in otherwise maybe deadly force situations have office. Sergeant Powell has a background in special operations prior, taking on the full role of the detective. So look at our use of force incidents. Look at the numbers. Look at the facts, because I've been around a long time, long enough to remember Joe Friday. There is some wisdom in the word just the facts, because the facts do back up everything that I'm telling you about the way that force is used on the department, the way that we interact with people in custody situations. I just am not offering you words to reassure you without being willing to back those up with examples if need be. I know what goes
Council
on,
President?
and I truly believe that we're the right department right now, and we will only get better because we never rest and we're always looking to improve.
Council President, may I raise a question?
hold on 1 second, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Winslow had his hand up first. Did you have a question about something he just said?
No, I just wanted to direct a question.
Okay.
I'll wait for Councilor Winslow.
Hold on 1 second. Councilor Winslow. Oh, you're not unmuted.
I have a couple questions. One, Chief and Sergeant Powell, what in the department do you do to help build cultural understanding of officers of the community? I've been here over 30 years, and Malden's a community that's ever evolving. So how do you build that into the day-to-day and year-to-year work of the department to understand the community and the diversity?
Well, that probably begins early on in the hiring process when we ask potential police officers what they know about this community. And when we look into people's backgrounds, we look to see things about them that might indicate whether they would be a good fit or not. People that become police officers in Malden don't land here from some other planet. They understand what Malden is, the type of department that they will be joining, and what type of community that they will be serving. So in the police academy, there is generalized training about respect for other people, de-escalation, use of force, community relations. But as I said, the best laboratory to decide or prove whether you are the right person to be a cop in this city is to get out there and do it. And when you go out after roll call, not knowing what you're going to face, and by the end of your shift, you have traveled the world. You have traveled the world. And if you can travel that world by solving problems, building bridges, changing people's attitudes, and maybe they're changing yours too. Because I've lived here my whole life, and I've learned more things about the world without leaving Malden than I ever did in my life. And I'll tell you one thing, Sergeant Powell and I were talking before we went live here, and we were reflecting upon that. I mean, we're a city, but we are not a huge department. I have friends on the NYPD, they might not even know each other. We all know each other. We're not all best friends, but we all know each other. We know each other by name, we all work together, and we're aware, or should be aware, of what type of attitudes that people have and how that influences their work. But I'm telling you, you go out there as a cop in this city, you cannot hide from the world as we know it, and you have to navigate it, you have to explore it, and you have to appreciate it, and you got to embrace it. And we do it. We do it. And I hope my confidence is coming through right now. Again, I'm going to say it all the time. Imperfect people trying to build a more perfect union, but it is done in a way. This is the best learning experience you can ever have. And just to give you a point about that, we just swore in a new cop 2 weeks ago who lateral transferred from a community nothing like Malden, nothing like it. And he wanted to come here. He wanted to come here because this will offer you every opportunity, challenge, motivation, and satisfaction that you could ever want. And sometimes it is challenging. You go to a car accident and there's people there from 2 different parts of the world that you never even heard about. But that's when you improvise and adapt and you get through it. And at the end of it, they appreciate you and you appreciate them. And I wouldn't know those things if I wasn't engaging in what goes on here on a daily and a nightly basis. You all know me, and I think you know my approach, you know my availability, and you know that the way I try to do the job, but it's what the cops go out and do after that roll call. So
So,
again, the language issue, can we have a cop for every language? No, it's impossible. Can we communicate with everybody in every situation the way optimally? No, it's impossible. But what do? You work through it. They help and you help. And again, what I want people to do, look at what has gone on here. Look at what goes on here. Look at how many people still choose to come here to live, to work, to worship, to raise a family. And that's not by accident. The city works hard at this. Some of you might recall years ago when a lady from Syria got attacked after the marathon bombing. She'll remember what we did. We made that a prioritized crime. But we didn't stop there. The city, the mayor, the council, we had a public event to let that person know that what happened is intolerable. Intolerable as a police agency, as a city, and as a society. So when we get the chance to prove the oath and the badge, we do it. We do it. Now, don't get me wrong, there's gonna be times we come up short, and there's always gonna be somebody that's gonna say something on Facebook or Twitter or those other things that I don't even pay attention to. But I know what we do for real, for real.
So my second question is if, just related to a resident, if they have a feeling that they have not been treated either by a neighbor or even in the unlikely thing of an officer, how would you recommend they notify the department of that? So whether it's a resident or an officer.
Well, if a person has a problem with their neighbor, the police get involved when neighbor problems rise to the level of a dispute in which crimes have occurred or are about to occur. But again, if somebody has a problem with a neighbor and it is escalated into hate speech or vandalism, now crimes have occurred. And if bias is the reason, then that's a crime that should be reported. And the way you report crimes to the police is the same everywhere. If it's an emergency going on, you call 911 or 781-322-1212. Anybody that wants to make a complaint against an officer can do so by either getting a formal complaint form, or they can contact me, they can contact the patrol commander. There are many methods of communicating. I mean, all of the city councilors that are here are very attentive to their constituents. You all know me. You all do call me. That's what I want you to do. So the means by which people can contact us is probably as easy as possible. But again, there are some people who fear the police because of their experiences in other places, whether it be a country where the cops are no good, they are part of an oppressive government, and that experience has not been eradicated from their experience, and it takes some challenge. But I've seen those challenges overcome, and it's dependent upon our ability to let people know we actually care. And we do that.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks. Great.
Thank you. Hold on, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Di Maria was first. Councilor Di Maria, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. And I don't actually have a question for the chief or for Sergeant Powell. I just have a huge appreciation. I think the Malden Police Department is a stellar, superior department, a leader in so many communities. 10 years ago, we had a huge drug issue with gangs, and that was quickly cleaned up. we have so many languages spoken that with all the sensitivity training that you're sharing with us, Chief, that was my question actually. So 2 questions ago, you already answered that. So I am so grateful. To me personally, there is absolutely nothing more important than the safety of our residents. So I thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Oh, thank you. Chief, I want to take it in a little different direction, if I may. I think you've spent a lot of time telling us about what's been going on in the Malden Police Department, and I think we're all very aware of the good work that you and the whole department have been doing. But I'd like to talk about, you mentioned that you've got a good force, starting with the way you interview applicants that are applying to the Malden Police Department. And I think we all know that people can act one way during an interview, but you really never get to know them until they're on the job. We've seen nationwide the camaraderie that takes place in too many police departments where wrongdoing has taken place by police and others have covered it up. We don't have that here, I'm sure. I'd like you to talk about the things that you are doing to help overcome those systemic problems that we are seeing throughout many other departments. The example of this murder that took place just last week. I mean, here was a police officer who was kneeling in the neck of George Floyd, and 3 other police officers were helping to hold him down. And if there had not been for the videotape that we all saw, that report would have been in, showing that this guy has, the victim was resisting arrest, and they had to use this amount of force to keep him in check. And that's the way the story would have most likely played out, because that's the way it's played out in most other places around the country. I'd like you to talk a bit about how you're overcoming that, how we're overcoming that in the city of Malden. You know that you get to know the police officers that you hire much better once they're on the force. Like those of us who are married, we get a chance to know our spouses much better, once we're living with them and not when we're just dating them. So can you talk a bit about that, please?
Sure. Well, to kind of use your analogy, just because you hire a police officer, you're not married to them, you can divorce them.
Okay.
So, admittedly, when you do hire somebody, I guess it's like when you elect somebody. They can promise you a lot of things. Do they deliver them all the time? No. Sometimes it's empty words, sometimes it's campaign slogans and promises. On the police department, there is a vetting process, and it also involves a psychological battery of tests to try to see if there are any underlying conflicts that might be inconsistent with the job of a police officer. But as you said, what happens when they go out there for real? I am a bit of a historian about the tradition of policing. And I remember something that was said years ago by a New York City detective named Bob Lucci. I wrote a book. It was turned into a movie, if I can just, this will help, called Prince of the City. Bob Lucci became very corrupt. And years later, when he reflected on that, he said when he got on the police department in New York City back in that era, 60s and 70s, there were 10% of the cops he worked with that were 100% honest, would never in their life even consider doing anything wrong. There were 10% who came onto the job with some integrity issues to start with and a propensity for evil, 10%. The 80% in the middle might drift either way, depending on who had the influence on them. Human nature. So what do you do as a police department? You can't be everywhere. We have one-person cars. After we have that roll call I talked about, the cops go out, they handle the calls, they're in their sector. They're pretty much by themselves. So you can't be everywhere. But it doesn't mean they go off on an island.
I guess I'm asking you to, I guess I'm asking you to talk about what specifically that you have been doing.
Yeah, well, what I do is on a daily basis through good people that I work with,
Okay.
instill values by example. There's things that people know you can do and you can't do. But there are some things that you can't do that people wouldn't do anyway. And I think, and I know from my observations and experience, that you have to trust that these people who you have given this hope and authority to will do the right thing. But it doesn't mean you have a false hope, because there is a level of accountability. There are laws, there is discipline. Getting back to something you said about the code of silence that used to protect or immunize people from accountability. How did that evolve? That has evolved through the fact that there is more public scrutiny now. There are more laws to make it easier for the public to come forward. There is a more assertive media. There are more active members of the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Attorney General's Office that deal with civil rights. There is civil litigation that can be pursued. There are a multitude of ways which somebody who feels victimized by bad treatment by law enforcement or any arm of government can come forward. And those things did not exist with the strength and the availability that exists now. So that's a very, very important change in the police world. On some of the more high profile cases that have happened throughout the country regarding the code of silence that you referred to, Neil, we have seen federal prosecutors have the ability to put police before a grand jury and let them know that if they don't tell the truth about what they know or what they saw, that they will be accountable because of perjury or other offenses. That has a compelling impact on what used to be known as the code of silence.
Well, apparently that code of silence is still happening throughout many places of the country. And what I'm asking, and I guess what I'm asking, Chief, hold on. I know, here's what I'm asking you. I'm saying that's what's happening throughout many places, many departments throughout the country. It doesn't seem to be happening in Malden. And I guess I'm asking you, are there specific things that you're doing differently in running your department that's preventing that sort of thing from happening? I'm saying it's not happening in Malden. And I want you to talk about it.
I want to be clear. I'm not here to take credit beyond I got great colleagues. I meet with the major city chiefs, all the big cities in Massachusetts. We get together once a month. The idea of accountability, the idea of tolerating bad behavior is something that is absolutely aberrational in this day and age. Absolutely aberrational. And I would really ask you to kind of take a good look at that and look at the times that police have been prosecuted for criminal acts, when they have been discharged. And it's really something that has completely changed from my early years on the police department. And it's been a good change. It's been a good change. And let me tell you another thing. For whatever reason, whether they be personal or professional, I don't know any cop that I know well that is willing to lose his job to save somebody else. And if there's one dramatic change that has happened in the law, is that you will go down to, if you were present and did nothing or acted inappropriately or illegally when something was occurring. That message has really resonated among cops. It's very possible that the curriculum, the academies now have expanded to 6 months. The issues of ethics, the issue of implicit bias, the issue of all the factors that enter into a police officer's perspective have an impact. But when you do get out of the academy and you go to your police department, it's the values that that agency holds that are going to be part of who you are as a cop and what you become as a cop.
And I guess I would just contend to say that all these demonstrations that we're seeing around the country, and including here in Massachusetts, are coming and emanating from a group of people, mostly Black people, who are saying these things are still happening. These things, so despite all of the courts and the laws, there is still a code of silence that in too many places is still being implemented. And that's what I believe we've seen in Minnesota, and we wouldn't have seen it had it not been for the videotape.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that I have always, I welcome when there is evidence to support what happened. That's just a general rule of policing right now. We rely on video so often to be able to help us put together a case, to be able to interview witnesses after the fact, to see whether their story lines up with what video imagery is showing. And that is probably one of the most compelling changes in our society, that there is now evidence available that is neutral, objective, and cannot be manipulated to serve the interest of someone on either side of an issue.
I would assume that at these roll calls that you're saying to your officers that there is discussion, not only from you, but your other your superior officers, about the sensitivity of not being biased and making sure that message is proactively set out there, not just reacting to someone who may have a complaint. And so
100%.
Okay. That's what I was looking. That's where I was looking to go with this. That's where I was going.
I'll be clear, Neil. It's probably unusual that the chief goes to a lot of roll calls.
There's some superior officer who's leading those roll calls, and it would seem to me that those superior officers must be saying, "Hey guys, we got to make sure that we keep it right here."
Yeah, and I believe it is extremely obvious and well known that your actions out there have a level of accountability attached to them that you cannot escape from if certain facts emerge. And there is no officer in charge, there is no superior officer who creates a message or a wink of the eye that says those rules, those laws, those ethics don't mean anything to us because we are part of a close-knit group that watches out for us in total disregard for the sacred oath that we took. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. I'm not saying it
Thank you, Madam President.
I'm not saying it couldn't. Again, I'm not naive, but I'm just telling you that from what I see, we are in a very good spot.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Linehan, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. Chief and Sergeant Powell, first, just thank you again for joining us tonight and for your statement this weekend, and also for taking the time just now to outline how seriously you do take incidents of bias and hate. I know in my short time on the council, you've already helped me assisting several very vulnerable residents, and I thank you for that. And I know you do always take our calls and texts. I do have a few questions based on things that constituents have emailed me about in the last week in particular since George Floyd's murder, and thank you in advance for considering them. There's three. The first is, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to the anti-bias or implicit bias and de-escalation trainings that you mentioned earlier. The second is, can you speak a little bit to the department policy around body and or dash cameras? And the third is, do we engage with any kind of independent oversight board when it comes to officer complaints? So that's it. And thanks for your transparency and willingness to take our questions.
Sure. The interest on the issue of training, as I said, police academy curriculums shifted through the evolving, needs addressed, through the training councils. That de-escalation and bias-based issues should be something that is, reinforced in the police academies. Every year, officers undergo mandatory in-service trainings, and there's various topics that are brought up based upon evolving situations that have occurred throughout the country or throughout society. Actually, there's a training called crisis intervention training that I've been able, through some grant money, to send officers to as well. So on that area, it's another indication of the evolving recognition of police agencies to deal with this societal reality. In the same way, years ago, police stress was not even talked about. We've come a long way in that. The recognition that stressful jobs might have a cumulative effect on someone's mental health. So back when I got on the police, there was no such thing about police stress. So it's just an example. We have evolved, we have come forward. But what's one of the other great messages? I always find that people tend to hate things they don't know, or they have bigotry or bias against something they don't know. So what's a better thing than for a cop here to sit down with a guy like Mike Powell at roll call? What's a better thing than for people at roll call to be standing there and there's an officer, an Asian officer standing to his right, an African-American officer to his left, a Brazilian officer there, a female officer. The familiarity with which we engage internally is something that I think goes a long way. And if it's anything, the more you learn about people, the less you have to hate. I always find that the people that I've investigated in my career that are engaged in hate crimes or bias things are essentially losers and idiots who have probably never even had any engagement with what they allege to hate. And it's an ignorant stance in life. So the fact that you're a police officer in Malden, you cannot escape or avoid, even if you wanted to, the diversity that flourishes in front of you. And if you cannot live in that world, navigate that world, it is going to become abundantly clear that this is not the right place for you, the right department for you, and maybe you should go somewhere else, because we certainly would know about it. Now, that to me is one of the great, and I'm not trying to give you some like easy answer. I can tell you from my own personal life, and Mike can tell you the same thing. The engagement with people, a Malden cop is better served to go through life than most cops anywhere else. A kid that goes to Malden High with 70 different languages is better suited to get through life than some kid that goes to an all-white school who only interacts with the people like him. Malden is the best place to be a cop, in my opinion. I am biased is the wrong word, I guess, but I am biased because I know what we got, and I know the rewards, I know the challenges, and I know the beauty of it. And I know that it works. I know that the people respond to it because I see it, I feel it, and it's just something that is a beautiful thing. And I'm not just trying to give you flowery words. I'm trying to like open up my shirt, take my vest off, and pour my heart out here and let you know that this is the best police academy in the world. If you want to open your eyes, open your mind, open your heart, and maybe open your arms every now and then, and embrace it. Now, second one, body cameras, great piece of equipment. Dash cams, good equipment too. Body cams, I have no philosophical problem with them. There's an economic reality. They cost a lot of money. There's the issue of storage. And there is also the issue of a negotiated aspect of a change in work with a union. It doesn't mean it's insurmountable, but on the economic end, I will tell you this, the mayor and I have talked about this. And again, there is no philosophical dispute that having documentation of incidents is a good thing. Why, there would be no argument that having a video of something would be bad, okay? It's objective, it's truthful. If sports does it for something that means nothing, sports, it's a good thing. But there's an economic reality to that. And there's also a union reality to that too. However, I will tell you on the economic thing, if somebody put a pile of money in front of me and said, get body cameras or hire more cops so I can have more cops in schools, so I can have more cops out engaging with kids, so I can have more cops doing good things with people, I'd say, give me more cops. That's how much faith I have in what a human being can do. That's how much faith I have in it. Now, I wouldn't be saying that if I had a situation where I had credible proof that things were bad here, that there were cover-ups, that there was use of force incidents that were far beyond what's acceptable. If I thought that was the case and technology was the answer, then I would say that would be money well spent. But I am telling you, there is no philosophical dispute about them. The mayor and I talked about them. They were hot on the discussion around the country a couple of years ago. There are some departments that eventually went to it, but again, I want you to all be aware as a body that there's an economic component to it and a negotiated aspect, you know, with unions. But I want to let you all know there is not a attempt by me or the mayor or anybody to not provide tools that enhance accountability to the public about what we do. The third one, what was it? What was the third question? There was a three-pronged question.
Yeah, sorry. I hate it when people do that to me. I shouldn't have done it to you. It was,
all right.
do we engage an independent oversight board or complaint if there's
okay,
complaint?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a few ways you can do it, depending on the level of the complaint. I mean, you could always go the traditional official route, fill out a complaint form. It gets assigned to a superior. It gets investigated. There's an investigative outcome. Witnesses are identified and interviewed. Any evidence that's involved is looked at. If there is any hint at all that the alleged misconduct involves a crime, the district attorney's office gets involved in that. And that is a completely independent body that would have, you know, that now you're looking at, again, checks and balances, transparency. Now you're talking at a completely independent level. You also have the possibility, depending on the level of misconduct now, the Attorney General's office, Maura Healey. You could go to the federal level. You know, if it's a civil, if it's a serious allegation of misconduct, you have federal agencies. But internally, we have a complaint process that people can feel very comfortable about. I've been chief over 7 years. I am telling you, if anybody makes a civilian complaint through my office, it gets investigated. And there is absolutely no example of anybody who met any type of negative consequences because they filed a complaint. Because that of and in itself would be a sanctionable action of intimidating someone, and that would not be accepted. So there's an official mechanism to do it, but as we know in life, there are some people that might be afraid to use official channels. If you know someone, again, I encourage you to assure them And if you have to be the vehicle or the conduit by which that information gets to me, we can work through it, through every situation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Linehan. Councilor Kamel.
Chief, I want to thank you very much for coming here and having such a candid and heartfelt conversation with us. You know, I call you often, and I respect you a lot, and I'm very grateful for the job that you do and the relationship that you have with us and the people in Malden. So thank you very much for being here. I wanted to, was encouraged by something you mentioned. You mentioned de-escalation training, and I just was hoping to have you talk just a little bit more about that. And I know it's an outside chance. I know the demonstrations and everything are being pretty much focused on larger cities, but you know, what discussions or anything have we had if there were to have in-person demonstrations here within the city of Malden, and especially with regard to the de-escalation policies and training for
Yeah. All right. So de-escalation is kind of a broad term. It can be on a one-on-one situation, or it can be involving a group, a small group, or a large group. I mean, de-escalation essentially comes down to, let's open up some communication, let's talk, and let's come up with an alternative to what you are currently thinking you're gonna do. Now, a perfect example of that is a couple of weeks ago, I'm on duty. We have a middle of COVID-19. Person's having a mental health crisis. Police officers go there to render help. Families pleading for help. Person is having a mental crisis. Boots out the air conditioners on the second floor roof. Bad situation, right? So I happen to be going there. Cops are doing a great job. They got the area cordoned off. I talked to the guy. All right, now I have a little background in this stuff with like hostage negotiations and what have you. But at the end of the day, it was just being patient, kind, engaging, and willing to listen. And I might get in trouble for this, but got him a cigarette, offered him my hand, and he came off the roof. So de-escalation sounds real involved, okay? De-escalation might involve when two city councilors are going at it over some issue and one steps in and says, hey, calm down. We can get the street paved. Don't worry, we'll do half yours. But anyway, it involves the ability to understand that in the heat of that moment, that crisis can be averted if you engage the person. Now, the crisis intervention training is even more specific because it allows you to maybe look for some telltale signs of a specific mental illness, whether it be schizophrenia, bipolar, or things like that. So that's an added layer. So de-escalation, we do this all the time though. De-escalation training could be two people at a car accident and one of them wants to beat the other one up. And when you get there, you go, hey, Tom, you know, because I got to tell you, just showing up with this uniform on doesn't cause people to immediately transform from an angry person to a docile person. It takes work. It takes some effort. It takes some innovation. You got to be willing to take some abuse sometimes. You got to be able to listen to somebody say why their day went wrong. So the message of de-escalation is one of realizing that it's sometimes better to take the time to do that than to immediately escalate to the use of force. And when I say force, I do not mean deadly force. I might mean another level of force, but if you, one of the beauties of de-escalation is it reduces the risk to officers and it reduces the potential for an officer getting hurt too. It's a win-win for everybody. And generally speaking, when somebody does that afterwards, they're kind of like, well, that was, I feel good about what I did. That was a good accomplishment. So de-escalation kind of takes the field of psychology and puts it in the hands of everyday people who come to work and go out there and saying, let's try to get through this shift. Let's try to make sure nobody gets hurt. And let's try to help some people, because there's nothing better, nothing more rewarding or relieving when you got somebody who is in a severe crisis and you can calm that situation down. Whether to just to get them to say, put your hands behind your back, you got to go in the ambulance. You know, there are some specific intricacies to it, but at the end of the day, it's about human interactions. And if you don't know, I love the cops that I work with. I'll say it. I love the way that they, each and every day, I'll see stories, I hear stories, I'll be reassured.
Yeah.
They do. It comes down to caring. I guess it comes down to caring.
Well, that's excellent.
You gotta be willing to take the time and the effort. If the easiest thing to do is get out and immediately, sometimes you gotta act quick, don't get me wrong, but there are other times when the crisis that's going on in that person's life, they just need somebody to listen to them. They just need somebody to listen to them. And just the fact that you were willing to listen might be enough to cause them to be more compliant. And sometimes it's so simple just to say, hey, my name's Kevin. I'm the police chief. I just want to talk to you. I just want to talk to you. That's de-escalation. That's de-escalation in a nutshell.
And that's great. And as you mentioned, there are, obviously scales of that. And I've seen the examples of de-escalation for an individual level. But the one thing I did want to say, have we talked about, and I know if you can't share details, I understand, but what we would do if there were larger demonstrations or protests here. So,
yeah.
And I know it's probably less likely, but I just wanted to sort of ask the question.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to keep it kind of general because I don't want to reveal any tactical realities. However, I have been engaged in conversations with high-level public safety officials and all the police chiefs. There are resources that are available if needed by any city or town in the Commonwealth to react to the manifestation of significant acts of civil disobedience that start hovering toward public safety concerns. Again, the right to assembly, there's a reason why the founding fathers made it the First Amendment, so they knew what number one was. You got to be able to speak. You got to be able to speak your mind. You got to be able to express yourself. You got to be able to confront things that you don't agree with. That's a fundamental aspect of who we are. So that's something as a cop, when you take that oath, like I did, that's why they tell you the Constitution is what you're going to uphold. You're going to uphold that. So we uphold that. But if it crosses into an area of public safety concern and violence and damage and the destruction of property, we have to be ready for that. And there are resources, if the numbers become overwhelming, that we would share with others and that they would provide to us. Intelligence gathering is very, very important. Try to know and understand where problems may occur. And that's kind of one of the other de-escalation things. In my career, and Sergeant Powell, we've been aware of people that have a message that they want to get out. And it's much easier to go talk to them first and say, okay, do me a favor, tell me what the plan is. If they're willing to tell us, we can say, all right, I got an idea. we'll block the street for you. You can, you stand wherever you want. You can do that. I mean, we're not without controversy. I mean, we've had people put whole signs outside the police station. One night, Sergeant Powell and I went outside and talked to them, invited them in the lobby to tell us what the situation was. That was de-escalation. I got to listen to what they had to say. They got to listen to what I had to say. So we are as prepared as we can be, but there is also a spontaneous, unpredictable nature to some of the things that are going on. I was in Boston Sunday night. Boston police called for help. Willie Gross is one of my heroes, dear friend of mine. I'd probably go anywhere in the world to help that guy out. And we sent officers in from like 9, 10 o'clock at night till 4 o'clock in the morning. And obviously there are people who are committing criminal acts and profaning the spirit of protest and the voice of moral outrage that what happened to George Floyd requires. So you need police in those situations. And, we're ready if need be, but I would always hope that through that type of event, there would always be the ability to have a conversation. Because I think the more you talk to people, it's harder to hate them, and it's harder not to at least offer them the benefit of the doubt. And I kind of touching the other night while we were in downtown Boston late at night. One of the police officers that was in our group comes across a 13-year-old kid who was out and alone, who lived in Boston somewhere. So, what does he do in the middle of all this? He makes sure the kid got home. So that's kind of what you're supposed to do. You go to these situations not knowing what you're going to do, and you get a chance to find a 13-year-old kid who's out on his own at 1 o'clock in the morning. And you take care of him. So, these are challenging times, but I think in our world, challenges are opportunities too. Some of the most challenging cases we've ever had gives you the opportunity to say you did your best. Make a victim feel never whole all the time. But if they know that you tried and really tried, it's amazing how much good there is out there in people. And sometimes what starts out as a negative situation can definitely be brought to another level of goodness and change and betterment of people on all sides. And I think, well, I'm not even, I know that. I know that. I mean, just look at some of the responses from cops around the country. I mean, look at the images. Look at the reaction. Listen to the words. Listen to the things that are being said. To go back to something Neil said, would you have heard that 30 or 40 years ago? No. So, I used to listen to my father play old records. I think Bing Crosby had accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. So, I went into downtown Boston the other night. I thought it was a movie scene, but I saw a cop take a 13-year-old kid and made sure he got home safe. So that's it's kind of the essence of what you hope for. Again, I always say it, more perfect union with imperfect people. And we don't hire robots. Going back to somebody asked, how do you know when you hire somebody? If you had to be perfect, they wouldn't have hired me. So we try to take all those imperfections, get through them, and realize that nobody's perfect. And together, you know, you try to get through this. You know, a month ago or 3 weeks ago, we were going to be talking about COVID-19. You know, George Floyd was alive, and our world was focused on that. And it's kind of an incredible thing, though, how the actions of one person can change things. And because of the actions of that cop out in Minneapolis, look at what it did. Look at what it did to a whole country. It's kind of an incredible thing, though, how the actions. No, it's real, Neil. I mean, growing up as a kid, I mean, look at what one person can do. Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Ray, Sirhan. One person, by an act of killing, can change in an instant the way a country lives, breathes, and feels about itself. Lee Harvey Oswald made my mother cry when I was 5 years old when John F. Kennedy got killed. I remember it. I remember what James Earl Ray did. And I remember Bobby Kennedy talking that night about the death of Martin Luther King. And then I remember in June coming up when Sirhan, one person, by an act of violence, an act of indifference to human life, temporarily changed the way a country lived, woke up in the morning, and looked at itself. But you know, in the same way, who's more remembered, Martin Luther King or James Earl Ray? So it's who the actor is. It's what they live for, what they died for, that makes them more impactful than the one that thought in that moment that killing was the answer. So that's kind of the way I look at that. So looking at what's going on now, the actions of one person play a big role in why we're even talking right now.
Great. Councilor O'Malley, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chief, for coming tonight and speaking to us. Thank you, Sergeant, also. You know, police, like public schools, are the safety net for our community. And as such, you often see the worst of that society. And you alluded to it earlier about how that can really weigh on the mental health of your officers. And I'm very sensitive to that. I think that is something that we're seeing across the country, is that a lot of our society is, I think, kind of at the end of their rope when it comes to, you know, police brutality, not necessarily here in Malden, but I mean, you're seeing, as you said, one person's murder can change, and hopefully it will change our country. And I appreciate that you're being really candid, because this is a very uncomfortable and I think sensitive conversation, and it brings out a lot of emotion. And I appreciate that you're being candid with us. You did mention that, you know, originally this was supposed to be related to incidents during COVID-19. And I think it was specifically related to whether or not there are any incidents of bias and discrimination that have occurred in Malden. And we had heard a few weeks ago that there weren't any instances. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure, and what I'll do is I'll let Sergeant Powell take that one, because it's an area that he is specifically assigned to because he has a tremendous passion for it.
And that appears to be the case today. There still is not any incidents involving COVID-19 and related to hate-related incidents. So that still remains the same. And we're not aware of any incidents, meaning no one has brought it to our attention and addressed it with us to this date.
are there any steps that we can take to make it easier or encourage people to report these incidents more now than we?
Yeah, if I can just jump in on that one. I mean, we do a very good job of outreach in the community. Chinese Culture Connection is an organization that I have been aware of maybe over 20 years now. Regular contact with Mei Hung. You know, Mai Du is someone who actually lives next to me. But beyond that, we have a very, we have members of the department who are conversant in the various languages and dialects. So that is a tremendous thing that we have as a resource. So we encourage people. And I will tell you that people have made us aware of prior incidents. Now, they are not related to the COVID-19 timeframe, but you know, we have had incidents, very small number, that we were able to investigate. The most one that I recall was a bunch of juveniles who were, you know, engaging in some harassing behavior. But again, we put all hands on deck, located the individuals, engaged in some restorative justice, had some mentoring done by, you know, my school resource officer. So I will tell you that it's reassuring to me how many people do have a willingness to engage us as a police agency, even though this city may be a new experience for them. I'm not naive to think that there are some who might be intimidated by the newness of their experience in Malden, but I don't attribute any deliberate walls that we have created. It is the opposite. We are very, very open to interaction with all segments of the population, and Sergeant Powell has Detective Kevin Coe, who works right alongside him. So you know, we have good resources here to get things done, and I also want to let you know that on the priority of it, if there ever is an incident of that magnitude, we communicate to the district attorney's office how much value we place on accountability to perpetrators. So,
thank you, Chief, for that. I'm going to pivot a bit to kind of what we've been discussing more this night. Councilor Linehan had asked about kind of what the process is for potential or alleged misconduct investigations.
Yep.
If I understood correctly, did you say that there's a form that residents can fill out?
Yeah, it's an actual easy form to fill out, and it can be submitted online or dropped off or mailed in. It gets assigned a number, so there is definitely documentation that it was received. I know for an absolute fact that the people are contacted regarding the matter, and it is looked at, and the outcome is provided. So, I mean, there's a very good system in place for people to do it. Again, it's like anything. We would hope that if anybody has a situation that is worthy of reporting, that they do it. There might be situations where people don't, for whatever reason. I can only assure you and encourage people that there are no ramifications. It is not tolerated that any obstacles are put in the way or anything is done to make them feel uncomfortable, letting us know that something that they found disturbing or troubling, you know, took place.
Just so I understand, are you saying that like if residents submit a complaint, or what is it officially called?
Well, there's an official complaint form. I'll tell you what I'll do, Ryan. I'll have one email to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you. No, so I just wanted to use the right terminology.
It's a civilian complaint form.
So you're saying that if someone submits a civilian complaint form, there's no chance that there would be any retaliation for submitting that. I think that's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I'm letting people know that I don't want them to be disinclined to do it because they've been led to believe, oh, if you complain to the cops, you're gonna be subjected to harassment. That's I wouldn't tolerate that. I mean, nobody would.
And you said that the investigation occurs by a superior officer within the
Oh
department?
yeah, 100%, 100%.
And
if it was ever something of any magnitude that I thought an outside law enforcement agency should look at it, I'd notify them.
And just so I understand, and for the public basically understands, a superior officer would be like a manager in a corporate environment, correct?
Yeah, superior officer is someone that, a sergeant or above, and then we would do our best to make sure there were no conflicts of interest. And again, there's a lot of ways you can investigate things. If it looks like it's too close to home and there needs to be more transparency, I know how to do that.
Are there independent oversight boards like that would those be like private entities, or are those public entities that you would refer something like that to?
Not within our city, no.
Okay. And out of sake of time, I had some other questions that maybe you could follow up with me by email. But I do want to kind of go back to the camera discussion.
Sure.
I think it was in 2011 that the case was Glick versus Cuniff. I hope I'm saying that name correct. It was a case in Boston that and eventually went to the Supreme Court, where the police charged an individual with a wiretapping charge for videotaping police at the time.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court that found that violated his First and Fourth Amendment. And I think that case really has a lot to do with why we're seeing all of the things that we're seeing now. And as you said, we police rely on video to solve a lot of crimes. I hope that we can try as a city to rally around, cameras, whether it be, dash cam cameras, or body cameras, or whatever you think is best. GPS for police vehicles, things like that. I think or all city vehicles, to be honest with you. I mean, I just think it's crucial for the confidence of the public to kind of know that our police is just as transparent as they're able to be in their investigations of residents and citizens. I think it helps breed trust. It helps breed the community policing that we all want to succeed. So I don't know if I know you already talked about it, but I just kind of wanted to express my opinion there when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said before, there is no philosophical dispute over the merit of body cameras or video imagery of an incident. But I think I explained what the realities were, and the case that you cited was something that was sent and discussed with every member of the police department when it came out. So again, we're guided by the law, and when the SJC speaks, that's the law. So that was an easy one, actually.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
All set, Councilor O'Malley?
Correct. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions.
I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Condon, I didn't see you. You didn't have the button pressed, so I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Chief, I want to thank you and Sergeant Mike Powell for coming before us tonight. As you know, I've been around a long time, and I learned years ago that there's not much as a city council we can offer you to do a better job than you do with this police department. I'm very proud of all the officers. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of knowing you for 50 years. The term 24/7 doesn't fit anybody any better than you, because I've called you at 7 in the morning. I've called you at 2 in the morning. And you're always there to help or answer a question. The only thing I can say to you is if there's something that comes up as far as training goes, sensitivity training, crisis intervention training, de-escalation training, that isn't in your budget. As a city councilor, years ago, we never had mitigation funds to support this type of initiative. But we do have mitigation funds as a council. And to me, it's a hell of a lot more important to maybe help fund some sort of training that will help us to become a better department. And I would only say to you that it's a heck of a lot more important than fixing a crack in a sidewalk, to help provide some sort of training that could be the difference of life and death. And if something comes up that you need, or you think it would benefit this department, please contact us. And if it isn't in the budget, maybe we can figure out a way to support you.
No, I appreciate that, Paul. And I've always said when I get the privilege of appearing before you is that I know I'm speaking to a group of friends that might not always agree 11-0 on everything, but I do know, regardless of where you stand on a variety of issues, that we all stand together in the hope and aspiration and the prayer that this is a safe city and a great city, and we all are committed to that. And you know, I really appreciate what you said about, you know, that commitment to help us. You know, your sidewalk perspective is great. You know, a broken sidewalk can always be fixed, but broken relationships between members of the community are sometimes, you know, can be irreparably harmed unless we find the fix or find the reason why the crack existed in the first place, or to identify that small crack before it becomes, you know, a gaping wound, for want of a better word. So, Paul, I always appreciate you know, the personal relationship that we've shared, and I mean, you knew me probably shocked as I am that I became the police chief. So I mean, here I am. So, but I appreciate all you've the heart that you bring to everything, Paul. That means a lot to me.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Okay, so seeing no other hands, no other hands? Anyone? Okay. I just want to thank the police chief for coming in to give us this opportunity to address such an important issue in the times right now. And I also want to take this moment to compliment Sergeant Powell for all the work that he's been doing. He is one of the men behind our creative use of social media. Yeah. And I absolutely love the posts, and I look forward to seeing how he engages our community with the Malden Police for many different topics of discussion in our city. And I just want to say thank you for that. I truly think that it's brought in the community together. So you and Sergeant Mitchell, thank you so much for all the work that you guys continuously do on our social media, the Malden Police Department social media accounts. It really is nice to see you guys bring the community together. So thank you so much for that.
And it's a group of us, you know. So we all try to make it work. But I'm glad.
Okay, well, I knew you were one of them, and I love to see them. I like to see, you know, our residents engaging, you know, with all of you that are running the program. It's great. I love to see it. It's great. So thank you so much for that.
We thank you.
And thank you for coming, guys.
Thanks very much.
City Clerk, are you there? Where are you? Okay, perfect. So we have next order of business.
Good, right?
You get the minutes from May 19th, paper 147-20, minutes of the meeting, May 19th, 2020.
I make a motion.
On Councilor Di Maria's motion to approve these minutes, seconded by
Anderson.
Councilor Winslow. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
Kamel, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Oh, yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora. Spatafora,
He might have a problem.
Yes, can you hear me?
okay, Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Pika,
4 yes, sorry, Mike. All
Speaker, yes.
right.
carries 11-0.
Next order of business.
Paper 148-20, the minutes of the meeting of May 26, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Anderson's motion, seconded by Councilor Di Maria. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel, Kamel, Kamel,
Did we lose him?
He is in by phone. You may actually have to unmute him, JD.
Oh, hold on. Councilor Kamel.
Kamel, yes. And Ron was right. My phone's still connected, but my
No
computer
worries.
dropped off. I'm reconnecting.
okay, Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes. Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Freezing.
Winslow, yes.
Sorry.
Sika,
Speaker, yes.
carries 11-0.
Next order of business.
Paper 820, Class 2, Gary's Auto Sales, 160 Eastern Ave, Malden, Mass, 18 cars, it's a renewal.
Yeah, that,
Councilor Murphy, we need to vote to suspend the council rule, or do you want to talk on this first?
No, it's just we obviously haven't had a license committee meeting, so we, Councilor Anderson and I wanted to bring this to the floor this evening, so I would hope we could suspend docket rules so you, the whole council could just hear the presentation on this application.
Okay, on Councilor Murphy's motion to suspend council rules, seconded by Councilor Anderson. Did I hear you?
Yep.
Councilor Anderson, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
Oh, hold on. Sorry, not used to. Kamel.
Kamel, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika,
Speaker, yes.
carries 11-0.
Councilor Murphy for the committee.
Okay, I'm going to start off by, if you all remember, last year we changed a lot of the ordinances around the granting of Class 2 dealers licenses. And we were requiring some things that should have been required in the past, but that everyone have a dealer's license, that they have a bond, that they have a quarry. And we had really never tracked that as well as we should have. But starting with last fall, we started doing that for the renewal application process. And as it turns out, some people did not have all of the documentation. In this particular case, the applicant did not have the dealer's plate. And as it turned out, we're requiring the dealer's plate before a license can be issued. But the state requires that the applicant for a dealer's plate has a license before they will accept the application for the dealer's plate. So we've run into a little bit of a situation, a little bit of a catch-22 with this individual. And I'm going to let Councilor Anderson speak to the dealership itself after I explain the situation. So we're coming tonight to look at this application, knowing that it doesn't meet one of the requirements, but that requirement is really, as I say, it's kind of like a catch-22. He can't get the dealer's plate for us to give him the license, because in the state's mind, the license has to be granted first. So we're going to bring it to the floor, asking that we grant this license with the caveat that the applicant then obtain the dealer's plate and give it to us within a 60-day period. So, and Councilor Anderson, has much more knowledge of the actual applicant and what he's trying to do at the location it's located in his ward. So I'd like to turn the microphone over to him to speak to the applicant himself.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We're here with a situation where someone's got some background noise.
Yeah, it's a radio.
Who is that? So that, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We've got a requirement for a person having to have a dealer license, and the state is saying, we can't give you the dealer license until you have the Class 2 license. So we voted to have it here on the floor. I'm not sure we had to vote because it's on the docket. What we're asking for is really just to discharge it from the committee, to move it forward. We've talked with the dealer. He's met all the other requirements that we've asked for of other Class 2 dealers, and so I would move that we grant this license on this provisional basis, that we'll look to have this dealer get his license, get his dealer plates within 60 days. And I look for a second.
I'll second it.
On Councilor Anderson's motion to grant this license, seconded by Councilor Condon, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
No, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Present.
present.
Yeah, I raised my hand, but I didn't get to ask a question. So I
Oh,
just want.
sorry, Councilor O'Malley, what was your question?
It's fine. We're in the middle of voting. It's fine.
Okay.
How'd you vote, Councilor O'Malley?
Just present.
Spatafora,
Yes.
Winslow,
Councilor Winslow, yes.
Sika,
Sika, yes.
carries 11-10-0 with a present.
Councilor O'Malley, did you want to speak still?
I'm not sure. Do we check with the zoning to make sure this stuff complies with zoning?
Councilor O'Malley, the building commissioner should be reviewing all these applications, so I am pretty confident that he already has. That's a new requirement with all the changes that we've made over the past year, so yes.
Thank you.
Was that all?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, you were breaking up a little on me. Okay, so next order of business.
Paper 14320, order that the Citizen Engagement Committee form a committee with the mission of identifying cost, location, and plan of action for a memorial honoring those Malden residents that lost their life due to COVID-19. This committee will work, plan, and present ideas to the administration and council, working over the span of 12 to 18 months.
Councilor Di Maria, did you want to discuss this?
Yeah, if you give me a second, thank you, Madam President. So I'm so grateful for the sponsors, especially Chairman of Public Properties, Brian O'Malley, for collaborating on this project. This coronavirus is a global pandemic, unlike any other disease we've experienced in our time. This project will begin with discussion for what we envision to be a respectful memorial. This project is not meant to be a financial burden and will not be rushed into until we are all pleased with it. I actually respectfully request this order to be referred to a joint Citizen Engagement Public Properties Committee.
Okay, so we got a motion made by Councilor Di Maria, seconded by
Councilman Anderson.
Councilor Anderson to refer this paper to citizen engagement and public properties, a joint meeting. Councilor Spatafora, before we take this vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I certainly will support this. I have no issue. I think it's a good initiative to memorialize anybody's here loss. The only thing I would ask the committee to just consider is it's, I don't know how to put it in a way that doesn't sound to be too morbid, but, you know, there are other diseases that in comparison are much larger. I mean, something like AIDS has affected 40 million Americans, and we're not going to memorialize that. So the only thing I would ask the committee to do, and again, I'm fully supportive of it, is to probably look at a way to look at other diseases that might have taken a large number of Malden residents, and maybe memorialize it at the same time. I only say that because if you're going in there planning, it might be something to look at. You certainly don't want to get a list of the most diseases that killed the more Maldonians, but I think it's something like that disease should not be looked at as well, or left out. That's my only suggestion, but I'm, again, willing to support this going to committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Winslow, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to sponsor this paper, and I also encourage the committees to think broadly, even consider you know, whether we should recognize the work of our first responders and frontline people who help survive as well. So that's just one thing I may, as things evolve, it might be appropriate to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands? Okay, so on Councilor Di Maria's motion, seconded by Councilor Anderson to refer this to joint planning, public properties and citizen engagement, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
Camille, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Metaphor, yes.
Winslow. Winslow,
He said yes.
Pika,
Speaker, yes.
carries 11-0.
Next order of business.
Paper 149-20, committee report, personnel appointments, paper 35-20, council confirmation of mayoral appointment of Sharon Santillo, 72 Ashland Street, apartment 402, Malden, Mass. As a member of the Malden Redevelopment Authority, said term to expire on May 1st, 2024. Sharon will replace Amanda Linehan, who recently became a member of the city council.
Motion to
On Councilor Crow's motion to receive the committee report, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
Yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Metaphor, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika,
Speaker, yes.
carries 11-0.
The committee report is received. Councilor Crowe for the committee.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I think just about every city council, if not everyone, was at our interview with them. A lot of people know her. She's an accomplished artist. She has 27 years. It's actually in 2007 was Artist of the Year of the country. And I think Councilor Anderson had asked her to not be modest and really about all the things that she's done in the community. A part of the mayor's right walkability committee. He's very active in the arts community and in a lot of projects in the city. So we had a really engaging interview with the committee who actually Councilor recused herself just because she wasn't sure if she should or not vote. But we had a great meeting, and we voted unanimously to approve this appointment to the redevelopment board. I mean, yeah, to the Malden redevelopment.
On Councilor Crow's motion to confirm this appointment, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Di Maria. The clerk will call the roll. Oh, hold on. You're muted. You got it? Hold on, let me try. No, not working.
Anderson.
Here you go.
I did it.
Anderson, yes.
Kamel.
Kamel, yes.
Condon.
Condon, yes.
Crow.
Yes.
Di Maria.
Yes.
Linehan.
I'll abstain since it fills a role I'm vacating.
Murphy.
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley.
Yes.
Spatafora.
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow.
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Sika, yes.
Appointments confirmed 10-0.
Next order of business.
Docket is clear.
The docket is clear. Would anybody like personal privilege? Nobody has anything to say?
I think we said it.
Winslow.
Yeah, I think people had already mentioned the vigil, the online vigil that's Thursday evening. So do look for that. It's sponsored by CORE, Mystic Valley, NAACP, and the Greater Malden Asian American Coalition. And then also this coming Saturday, Bike to the Sea has its virtual Bike to the Sea day, 7 p.m. So you can go to biketothesea.com and find out how to get involved in that. And there'll be some surprising photos from various counselors there as well. So it should be a nice time. It's a happy hour and a virtual Bike to the Sea day. And it's also featuring the To the Sea symphony that was written specifically about bike trails. So,
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Crowe, were you waving your hand? Okay. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to let everyone know that this Saturday, the 6th, there will be a Malden Pride celebration via Zoom. It's actually various events happening from the 3rd to the 7th. It's being organized by the Malden UU, the Unitarian Universalist Church, First Parish. And everyone's welcome to join. You have to sign up ahead of time. So if you could just go online, you can find that if you Google the event. Just wishing everyone a happy Pride. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Di Maria.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'm wondering if we could, as a council, offer a moment of silence to the 78 victims in Malden that have passed away due to COVID. I don't think we've done this as a council. They're faceless people right now. We just know names. I mean, we have no names. So if we could just rise and have a moment of silence for that.
We absolutely can have a moment of silence for that, but we have already done one a few weeks back.
Oh.
I think Councilor Spatafora actually initiated that moment of silence. Am I correct, Councilor Spatafora? So is it, if everyone's okay.
But again, there's been other people who died since, so it's probably, unfortunately, something we have to do again and again, but.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
I'll rise for a moment of silence.
Can we remain standing for a moment of silence for George Floyd?
Oh,
absolutely.
Thank you. I'll be seated. Okay. Anyone else? Personal privilege? Ryan, Councilor O'Malley, do you have your hand up again, or did I just not hit the button?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so on behalf of the chair, I just wanted to wish all the 2020 graduates congratulations. A lot of them have had graduations. I've noticed quite a few different creative ceremonies take place over the last couple of weeks. I happened to look at the charter school has a pretty amazing graduation ceremony that they're planning for next Friday. My son had a drive-in graduation ceremony a week ago Friday, which I was pretty impressed with. Everyone got to cross the stage, social distancing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Malden High has in store for a graduation ceremony. And again, class of 2020, congratulations. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, on Councilor Condon's motion to adjourn. Clerk will call the roll. You're muted. Everybody a
Anderson.
yes? Anyone want to
Anderson,
stay?
yes.
Kamel,
Yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Sika, yes. Good night, everyone.
Good day.
Good night.